I'm Darryl Cleveland, and if you want to switch to the next slide, I'm Darryl Cleveland, and I have the privilege of being our safety team leader here at Central Baptist Church. Recently took it over from Ron Ebel, who decided to step down from the leadership role. And we've been talking about doing this for a while, but we wanted to orient or introduce our body to the fact that we have a safety team, who we are, what we do, and maybe even recruit some of you if you're willing to join us in being part of the safety team. A little bit about myself. I am not former law enforcement. I'm a former fire chief and firefighter and paramedic. Did that for about almost 40 years. So I've seen the other side of violence, not the inducing side of it, if you will. But several years ago, I'm also a certified firearms instructor, which is what got me into the security side of things and beginning to be a part of this team. Well, it's been almost a couple years ago now. Anyways, the thing that got me into the security and firearms part of it was I really enjoy our Second Amendment, as I know many of you, if not most of you, do yourselves. However, I had kind of an epiphany at one point that the only thing I brought to the table was bad habits. So I had one of two choices. I either needed to fix the bad habits and get trained, or stop carrying a gun. There was no in between. So I opted for changing the bad habits, went down the instructor path, and became a certified firearms instructor. So I do a lot of our team's training as well. And then we have other people on the team that do some of our medical training and things of that nature. So that's a little bit about myself. Next slide, please. What we're going to cover today, that's a little too small for me over there, is you've heard my introduction. We're going to talk about why CBC, or Central Baptist Church, has a safety team, the team's mission and purpose, limiting church building access and why, how to identify security members, or safety members, I should say, what to do during an emergency at the church. We're going to go through a video called Run, Hide, and Fight, and then we'll have a little question and answer at the end. So next slide, please. CBC has a safety team for exactly the reasons of what happened yesterday in Pennsylvania. We live in a very changed world. Our world is becoming increasingly violent and dangerous. After seeing what happened yesterday in Pennsylvania during former President Trump's rally, which, by the way, let me back up for a moment and open us up in prayer. Forgive me for forgetting that. So if you bow your heads with me for a minute. Lord, we come before you this morning and we give you thanks and praise. Thank you for your word that you brought through Tyler this morning. Pray that you would cover this time where we meet together to talk about the reasons that we have a safety team at this church. And Lord, that we are all here to serve you, and that this team is here to serve you and this body of believers, that we can be as safe and secure as we can while we worship you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So, thanks for that. Anyways, yesterday was a perfect example of why we need a safety team. And a lot of things that happen around the country and the world on literally a weekly basis, you don't hear a lot in the mainstream media. Several of us on the team, we follow some different channels on YouTube and so forth, where they bring those things to light. And virtually every week something is happening, even here in our own state. We all remember back last March when there was a shooting in Nashville at the Christian school, Covenant Christian School, obviously very close to home. Our church at that time took a very proactive stance in prevention, and all of our external windows and the children's area windows are now covered with a ballistic film. And what that means is that bullets can still pass through. However, like that individual who perpetrated that shooting in Nashville, they can't enter themselves. It's pretty much unbreachable unless they just go completely bonkers on the windows. Anyhow, so that was something that happened. Last week in Nashville, there was I don't recall if it was an assault or a shooting of some type in a church parking lot in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. On Easter morning, somebody pulled a trailer up to a parking lot at a church and lit a bunch of Bibles on fire. So things are happening. and they're even happening here close to home. And so our church has taken the stance that we will have a safety team. And we've had the safety team for quite some time, long before I got here. I just get the privilege at this point of getting to be a part of it and being in the leadership of it. So we know that evil exists in our world. Tyler even mentioned that in his message this morning. We read it throughout the Bible that evil exists, and it will until Jesus comes back again and reigns over this earth. And like Tyler said, we look forward to that day. But in the meantime, we have to be prepared. We have to be ready for those events that can happen at any time and any place. And we are not exempt from those things. Furthermore, biblically speaking, as Nehemiah did in his time when they were rebuilding the wall in Jerusalem, he knew that there were enemies out there. And he knew that they needed to guard against those threats that they had. And so we believe that biblically speaking, we're doing what the Lord has called us to do and having a safety team to watch out over this body and to protect us as best we can. Next slide, please. So the team's mission and purpose, first and foremost, to glorify God in all we do. Everything we do here is for that purpose, and we are no different. Maintain vigilance in watching over our congregation's security and safety. Now, we are formally identified as the safety team, but that involves multiple other areas that we also cover. So safety is the umbrella, but security is a part of it, and our security team members are armed. And in being armed, we train, and we train a lot. There are churches here in our local area, churches around the country that either don't have a team, or if they do have a team, they don't train, or very little. We're very fortunate. Our team trains once a month, actually more than that. On the firearm side of it, we train twice a month. So if you've looked at the bulletin recently or any time in the last couple of years, there's the Central Baptist shooters listed there. And we meet over at the Crossville Shooting Park. We get together just for some fun shooting, but we also set up a skill building lane where we take our team members, our armed team members, and those others that are interested, and we work on building fundamental defensive firearm skills so that we're at our very best that we can be. Because the rule of thumb is you're only going to be about 50% as good on your worst day as you were on your last best day at the range. We want to try to improve those odds if we can. So, besides the security team, we're developing the medical team. We do have people trained in medical emergencies, myself being a former paramedic, Dave Burkhardt over here being a former paramedic, and several others that have some training. Joey Carlton is a current paramedic. So we have a medical team we're developing. We have our parking lot watch, and those people are people that they're equipped with a radio like we have, and they can communicate with the safety team. And they're out watching the parking lot for anything that happens. Or if there is something that happens, like a medical emergency, they can bring EMS in and come right to where we need them rather than playing guesswork. And then finally, we also have our Eyes and Ears group. And our Eyes and Ears group are typically, some may be armed, but not all of them. But they're people that are scattered throughout the congregation, and they're watching for things, and they have a radio, and they can communicate with us if something looks off or unusual while we're doing our worship service, and we can address that situation. We have had some interesting situations in the past that we've looked into. Occasionally, we have some interesting people that come into the building that we look into and we address. So there's not a lot. It came up in the 8 o'clock class about, well, where are all these people? And you know, this happened at one point, but it didn't seem like anything happened. We are well aware at any given time what's happening within this building. And we communicate with each other via these radios that we have on. And we talk and we address things and we look into things and we talk to people. So we are always on the watch. We are always around. And we're always taking care of the purpose that we're here for. So you can rest assured in that. We respond to safety and or security needs within the church, meaning that if we have somebody that has a medical problem during the worship service in this sanctuary here, we'll address that. Now, I'll talk about this in just a little bit. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we take care of those things. We take care of the parking lot. Anything that looks unusual. We have special events that occur here at times. The comedian that was here, I don't recall her name, but we have special events that we are here for. We have the Mother's Day Out that we have staffed with our personnel. So there's not much that happens within this church body that we don't have safety team members involved in. So you can rest assured in that as well. And then finally, we remain vigilant through preparedness and training. We train a lot. In fact, one of our church members was talking to Dave and myself earlier this morning that the Secret Service, who jumped all over President Trump yesterday when he was injured, they trained for 30 minutes on that stuff. 30 minutes. We train more than that monthly on the stuff that we do. So we try to stay well prepared, well trained, and definitely engaged in our purpose for being here. And if we're going to do this function for this church, as a leader, my vision and goal is that we are as well trained as we can possibly be, so that if something ever happens, we can protect this body. And we've signed up for that purpose. Next slide, please. Limiting church access and why. Now, this might be a little bit irritating to some people, but it's one of the primary things that all the security experts say you can do first and foremost to protect your facility, and that is to limit your access to the building. Now, obviously, Central Baptist Church here is a huge building in multiple different stages that it was built. When I was a firefighter, this kind of a building was my worst nightmare because it's a maze, and this maze is hard to find the cheese in. Okay? In security, it's not a whole lot different because there are so many ingress and egress points here. So it's obviously a challenging building. On Sundays and Wednesdays, our normal services, our access points will be the main doors right out here and the children's area doors. Frequently, people will go to the corner door there that we normally enter Monday through Friday to get to the front desk. That will not happen anymore on Sundays and Wednesdays. We will point you towards the main doors, all right? And there's lots of reasons for that. There's certain things that we're looking for so that they don't happen inside this building if we can help it. For instance, the shooting that happened in Texas, Houston, Texas, was it this past March? I don't recall. Anyways, these things are happening so frequently, it's hard to keep them all together in my head. But anyways, when they had that shooting at the big church in Texas, that should have been stopped out in the parking lot because there were very identifiable things that happened that should have been questioned, which is what we train on. We train with our entire team, our parking lot watch, our eyes and ears, our security, our medical, we do it all. And anything that happens, that may happen, God forbid, we want it to happen out there in that parking lot, not in this building. And so those are the things that we're looking for. And in order to do that, we have to be able to monitor the ingress and egress of this building. Does that make sense to everybody? So we're going to be limiting that access. Next slide, please. So how do you identify safety team members? Well, we all wear these funny little earpieces here, and we wear these red lanyards, and they have our name, and they say safety team with our church logo. Now, we don't want to wear brightly colored fluorescent green vests and things like that because while we want to be identifiable to you, we don't want to be completely identifiable to the bad guys that may perpetrate something against our church. However, we would rather them target us than target you. That's what we signed up for, and that's what your safety team trains for. So that's how you can best identify us. We all wear a radio that leads to this little ear microphone here. We don't talk to our wrists like the Secret Service because we train more than they do. In fact, I'm so wired up right now, I could probably change the orbit of satellites. It's kind of crazy. But that's one way to identify us. And even when our folks are not on duty, many of them will wear their lanyard, their identification, and be sitting somewhere in the congregation with a radio on so that they can be available or see something that might happen and notify those who are on duty. So we're really not ever off duty, if you will. Our team folks take great pride in what they do. They take it very seriously, and they're always available, which I'm very thankful for. I get the opportunity to serve with a lot of really great people in this congregation. The other thing that you'll see, which is something that we've recently started, is if we ever have a significant incident at this church where, say, we have a medical emergency, we have EMS coming in from outside, or we should happen to have a fire emergency or law enforcement emergency, the last thing we want is to be mistaken for somebody who's doing something they shouldn't be. So what our team members will be doing now is we are engaging these sashes that we'll take out and put over our shoulder so that we can be identified as somebody who's supposed to be there doing what we're doing, and especially if it involves guns, because we don't want to be mistaken and get shot for trying to do the right thing. So you'll see that we're not going to wear them on a regular basis as far as part of our identification, but in an emergency situation, you'll see these come out, which is good for your benefit as well, which is some things that we're going to talk about. So this is how we can be identified as safety team members. We have medical equipment staged in 2 places during our services, one here by the pastor and one at the front desk. So we have the ability to take care of some things. We have AEDs throughout the building, which are automated external defibrillators if we have a cardiac emergency. So we're pretty well prepared to take care of just about anything that we need to. Next slide. What to do during a church emergency. And this is for you folks. First and foremost, we need you to remain calm. Remain calm and listen to any instructions that you might be given. All right? If we have a situation where we need to evacuate this sanctuary, follow the instructions of your security team or your safety team members. All right? I'm trying to get away from the security team and go with safety team. Because we encompass everything. Anyways, if you see somebody wearing one of these and they're directing you to go a certain way, that means go that certain way, and they'll lead you to a safe spot. It may be outside the building, it may be inside the building. They will lead you to the place you need to go. It's not a time to get up out of your seat and come down and go, hey, you know what, I haven't seen you. How are you, brother? Gosh, it's good to see you. You know, how's the family? That is not the time for that. It's the time to get out of your seat and move to a direction that we're going to lead you to for safety. Those that are medically trained, how many of you in here have medical training, whether it's current or prior? Okay? So you know what it looks like to have all of these medically trained people converge on one person who, say, is having difficulty breathing. That's what we call chaos. Okay? Because everybody's there, everybody wants to help this one person, and the end result is nothing happens for that person. So when that happens, if we ask you to come over and help, you come up and offer and say, hey, I'm a such and such, can I help? We may ask you to help and do something. But otherwise, please stand back, give us the room to do what we need to do so that we can take care of that person and get them the care that they need. All right? We have physicians in this building, quite a few physicians. Are all physicians the same? No. An ENT doctor is not really going to do a lot of good for your foot. And a foot doctor is not going to do really a lot of good for your heart. And so we want to be careful about who we engage in helping somebody. They're not all emergency physicians, and they're not all trained in emergency medicine. So we just want to make sure that we're getting the right people to the person to give them the help that they need and not overwhelm a situation to where we're just completely dysfunctional. Now, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand here, but there are many people in this building that carry concealed weapons, which I'm a fan of. I love the Second Amendment. In fact, I teach about the Second Amendment. But it's also one of those things that I adamantly believe that just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should until you've been properly trained. Hence my earlier comment about fixing my own bad habits when I decided to become an instructor. because I literally was more of a danger than I would be a helper or protector at that point. And that just wasn't right for me. If I was going to be a help and a protector, I needed to be able to do it as proficiently and competently as I could. So, if you carry a firearm in this building, great. Leave it holstered, leave it in your purse. Don't take it out if we have some kind of an emergency unless we ask for your assistance. Now, somebody asked, how would I do that? That's a great question. Get one of our attention. Say, I'm armed. Can I help? Or do you need my help? Would be the best way to do that. But to just come out with weapons drawn, then we're going to have problems. And the last thing we want is anybody to get shot that wasn't supposed to get shot. We don't ever want to shoot anybody. But if we have to shoot somebody, we want to shoot the person that's looking to shoot you. Is that okay with you? All right, good. Then we're all in the same class here. All right? It's very important that we keep our heads about us and not do the wrong thing. Let your safety team, let your safety team, at least I'm not saying immorality, Tyler. Love you, Tyler. By the way, the humor was great. Anyways, we want to do the right thing at the right time for the right reason. And believe me, your safety team, those of us that are armed, our guns will never, ever be anywhere above the very last option that we have to utilize. We train on all kinds of other things prior to that becoming an option. It's the option of last resort when true life and death is in our hands. So, any questions about what we want you to do during a church emergency? I've covered it that well. I get to have feedback there, Tyler. Cool, huh? All right. So please, if ever a situation occurs, it may be as simple as, can you just move out of your pew for a minute so we can move this person to safety and a place where we can work with them? It may be just that simple. All the way up to, we need to evacuate this room and we're going to go a certain direction, not in the direction that could be harmful. So that's very important that you pay attention. Yes, ma'am. Down in the children's area? Okay, so that's a great question. That's a great question. And that wasn't asked earlier, so thank you for asking that. So the question is, what about when the parents are in a different area than where the children are back in the children's area? Correct? Okay. That's a great question. If you have children that are back in the children's area that we need to get you to, that actually leads into another point, one of those access limiting situations that we're instituting. Beginning very soon, where the children's ministry team is working on the technology piece to print the name tags that you're getting for your children and yourself when you check them in. Once that's done, it will be notified to parents and families on the realm that our new process is in play. And what that means is that nobody will be allowed into the children's area beyond those glass doors that doesn't have a name tag that goes with a child. Or if it's a staff member or a volunteer, it doesn't matter. You will have to have some identifying piece on you to get access into that area. Our children's area is one of our most vulnerable areas because you really never know what's going on outside of here that could cause a problem inside of here. So we take that area very seriously. We always have somebody placed there at those doors. And what we want to do, to answer your question, is you're going to have to notify us that you have that sticker on, and we will get a team member to escort parents back to their children. All right? We're working on, does that answer your question? Okay. We're working on some other things to increase our security measures here at the church in the way of surveillance. upgrading some cameras and things that I've identified with our staff members that we are working towards to improve our ability to surveil and monitor the building. Part of that being back in the children's area. So that's something that you'll be seeing come into play hopefully very, very soon. It's just the technology piece that we have to get fixed and get that in place so that it's working the way we want it to. Next slide, please. So Run, Hide, Fight is a national program that's being taught around the country to schools, to businesses, to churches, you name it. What do you do if there's an active shooter? And we're going to watch this video here in just a second that will go through what Run, Hide, Fight is, and then we can talk about it a little bit more after the video is done. Go ahead and roll the video.
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference. Run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important, you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. and commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
So the Run, Hide, Fight program is something that we're now teaching school kids instead of duck and cover under your desk because of an earthquake or a nuclear bomb that we taught in the 50s. Those are your best options if we have an active shooter inside the building. Run if you can. That means get out of the building. Don't worry about your personal belongings. If you can get other people out of the building with you, great. But don't sacrifice yourself in trying to get them to go with you if they're not going to go. In other words, somebody hides under a pew and they're just terrified and won't move. Okay? Get out of the building yourself. Get to the closest exit you can find and move outside the building all the way out. That's your first best option. If your only option is to hide, and this came up in here, when this sanctuary is full on a Sunday morning, it'd be pretty hard to get all those people out of here, wouldn't it? So the really only place to go is down. Get down as low as you can. For those that have trouble getting on the floor, help them down. Cover each other. Get down, be quiet, and we're going to be responding to take care of that situation as fast as we can. We'll have local law enforcement on the way. That's what our team trains for, is how to address that situation if it ever ends up inside this building and we have to address it ourselves. We hope we never will. But as we keep seeing on a regular basis around our country, that's becoming more and more a risk. And because we're one of the bigger churches in the community, that makes us a target. In fact, the Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Department of Homeland Security, has put out bulletins about the risk to places of worship that exist in our own country. We have people flooding in across our southern border that we don't know who they are, why they're here, or what they plan to do. And they may do it at places like this because they're large congregations of people, they're easy targets, and they can affect their terror in any way they want to. So that's the stuff that we train for. Lastly, if you have to fight, be committed to that fight because you may end up saving many, many lives. Hopefully yours as well. But find something you can use as a weapon and use it as vigorously and violently as you can because we can overwhelm an active shooter and take them down. The last place we want them is heading that direction towards our children's area. And that's one of our better protected areas, fortunately. We have a really robust plan for how to handle things in that children's area that we train on a regular basis. It's the least available area for anybody to get to, so you can trust in that. And we always have somebody there. So run, hide, or fight. And if you're going to fight, fight to the death. Theirs. So, some other things that we have to cover are we need people. We can use people on our safety team That includes security, those that are armed and want to train with us in an armed manner. Those that want to be part of our medical team that are specifically going to handle medical situations. Those that want to be part of our parking lot watch and help us out there and keeping an eye on things before it happens in here. And our eyes and ears, where you're just sitting somewhere in the congregation with a radio and you can call up and say, hey, there's a problem over here or something that we need to look into. We can use your help. We have a process that we go through today. We're formalizing everything about our team. We have a handbook that tells how our team functions and what we do. We have an application process. It's a single-page application, and then everybody that comes on the team has to have a background check, especially if you're going to carry a firearm. And we run that through the church, and we have a little interview and decide if you're a good fit for the safety team. So if you're interested and willing, we would certainly love to entertain the opportunity of bringing you on the team to help us out. Because it's a big building, it's a big congregation, and the few of us can't do it all. The other thing that's really important to me beyond just the coverage of things is the fact that our safety team members are members of this church. And the last thing I want is for us to be so engaged in what we're doing on a ministry or the safety team that we never get to come in here and be fed on a Sunday or a Wednesday. That we can share that opportunity out with more people and make sure that our team members are getting fed just like everybody else. That's equally important as what we do in our mission and purpose as a safety team. So that's one of the reasons that we ask, if you're willing and interested, let us know. We have applications for the team and for the background check out at the front desk. See any of us that has a red lanyard, and we'd be happy to get that paperwork for you and get you started. So with that, I'm going to ask for questions. If anybody has any questions, Dave will bring a microphone around to you so I can hear.
There was a point made about not pointing and yelling on the hide or...
Go ahead and give him the...
Does it work? Okay, there we go. So there was a point about not pointing and yelling that they were trying to make there. Maybe it was in the fight section, or maybe it was when the people were coming in or something like that. So I was just trying to think, like, I know I've done a lot of training with, like, overboard. You know, you always point at somebody who's overboard, and that's all you can do, right? So it seems like it would be helpful if, you know, military people are coming in or police or whatever, that you would direct them. But on the other hand, there's already maybe indications. So maybe it would be not helpful to point just because it might confuse them. What's the nuance with that statement?
Well, if I heard all of your question or comment, that's in a building that has office spaces, cubicles, and things of that nature, right? Being quiet, turning lights off, or school, like our children's area, we would do those things. Be quiet, turn the lights off, stay in one area of the room. And tell me if I'm not addressing your full question. But in a room like this, it's going to be a little challenging. How many of you got to see what happened yesterday? Probably all of us, right? They were in a big open area. The only difference between where they were and where we're at today is there's a roof. And in a situation like that, it's going to be chaotic. It's going to be loud. And it was there to a point. Dave and I were talking about it. It was remarkable how calm everybody was. We attribute part of that because President Trump stayed pretty calm himself. He was still in control, which I thought was pretty amazing. But in a place like this, there's going to be some yelling. There's going to be some screaming. If we start hearing pop, pop, pop out in that foyer out there, that's going to get everybody a little bit excited, right? Remember to stay as calm as you can. We need people to stay calm, keep their heads about themselves, do what needs to be done, whether it's getting down in the pews or we can get some people exited. And am I covering everything you asked?
Well, I'm not sure. It's I know that, like, so one of the things I was reading about with that incident was in Pennsylvania was that there was a guy who was pointing and he was telling the cops, hey, there's a guy climbing up on the roof with a gun, with a rifle, You know, he was pointing, and that was a very valid use of pointing.
Well, true.
So, anyway, I just think that maybe I was just wondering about, like, what is the subtlety? What is the situation where pointing is not advised? Pointing in particular, not yelling. Yelling doesn't make any sense to me, of course, but
Okay.
you know.
So I'm having a little hard time hearing you up here, but the reality is in an emergent situation, people are going to panic, right? Because it's outside of normal, it's dangerous, it's a crisis situation, and that's going to be the reality. That's just what happens. And it's one of the reasons why we're doing this, so that we can hopefully get some of that under control. Does that make sense to you? And let you know that, now yesterday in what we saw, as soon as the shooting started and he went like this, the Secret Service were all over him. Well, that's a wonderful thing. If we didn't have a safety team, law enforcement would get here just in time to draw the chalk lines. And that's not a dig on law enforcement, it's just the reality of emergency response, which is why we have the safety team that we have. We are those people you saw yesterday that jumped on him to protect him. We are those people that are going to get in their way so that they can't get to you. That's the commitment we've made. It's what we pray we'll never have to do, but if it happens, it's what we'll do. So, what we want is for our congregation to know our expectations as a safety team on what needs to happen in case of an emergency. Hopefully addressing the questions that you have, that you'll keep calm, you'll follow directions, and do what we need you to do. Does that help?
I think that might be all we get.
So, and let me just clarify here. Are you talking about, like, those guys, they saw something, so they said something? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, I was just curious how they developed the idea that was bullet pointed in the
how they developed
video.
this here?
Yeah, in the video where it just said no pointing, and it's like, how did
Well-
they come to that point?
Okay, I understand what you're getting at now. How they developed it is, unfortunately, we have a lot of experience with mass shooters in this country. And trying to figure out the best options for people in those events, in certain settings, your best option is to get out of the way. If there's a train motoring down towards you, your best option is get out of the way of the train, right? If you can't get out of the way of the train, where can you hide so the train doesn't hit you? And then finally, if you have to fight the train, how are you going to do that? Does that make sense? So it's been born out of reality and the things that have happened experientially in this country from mass shooters. And that's how they came up with the run, hide, fight. Does that help? Okay.
Let's say that, excuse me, that there's a shooter in this area somewhere. Is it not best that we in this area would get down and rather than having to, the best place that I see would be to go forward under the seat so that the people back, so that we don't go this way and bump into somebody that's trying to come with, would that be correct?
Yes, the best you can do to get undercover like that
Would be the
is-
one forward?
Yes.
Okay.
And get yourself as hidden as you can possibly be, and obviously underneath these things is going to be the best. Because when we're standing in the back there, if people are hiding under these pews, we can't see them. And that's the best thing. The people that are going to get hurt are the people that are visible. So that's a
And
good...
secondly, how many are on your team?
I'd rather not divulge that at the moment.
Okay. And we don't know who they are, and we shouldn't know who they are?
Well, you know who they are because they wear these red lanyards and the identification that
All
says
the
safety
time?
team. When most of the time, yes.
Okay.
Especially those of us that are on the schedule for that day.
And you can always use more.
I'm
people.
sorry?
You can always use more
Oh,
on your
absolutely.
team.
Absolutely. One of the things about volunteering is there's never enough.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dave, there was a lady back there in the white sweater, I think.
On the movie thing, you know, the guy walks in, he's dressed in black, he's got sunglasses on, and he's got a backpack on. Now, there was a policeman standing there. Now, doesn't that throw up a red flag that maybe we better find out what this guy's up to?
Well, it absolutely does. And, you know, we have the fortune of having Danny here most of the time from our sheriff's department, and he stands there at the door handing out bulletins on Sunday morning. And we're thankful for that, because Danny's not just standing out there handing out bulletins to help Coop out and be a nice guy. He's looking at who's coming in this building. When I talked about the Texas shooting down in Houston just a little bit ago, there were so many telltale signs to that individual that was going to do something bad. They parked a car in a red zone. They turned the car off, they left the flashers on, they got out of the car and took a kid. When they got out of the car, you could see the long coat that he or she was wearing with a rifle under it, and was wearing a long coat in 72-degree weather. That's kind of odd, wouldn't you say? That should have been caught in their parking lot. Obviously, they don't have the parking lot watch that we have, because our parking lot watch guys will notify us, even if it's somebody that works full-time at the church who's walking up with a bag in his hand, like last Sunday. Okay? They thought Jose looked a little bit iffy. Now, if he is, I don't know, but, you know, we were all over that. So we have those things in place, and again, we train on those things. We brought our team together, and we talked about looking at that video and stopping at a point where it was like, look at all these things that scream, here's a problem coming in our doors. Let's not have it inside of our doors. Let's keep it out there. So, yes, and does that mean that it can't happen? It doesn't, because these people are creative with how they perpetrate their crimes. It's really not that hard to get into this building, even if it's locked. I'm not going to tell you how. But if somebody really wants in here, they can get in here from an exit that we don't, or an entrance that we don't cover. But we try to make sure that that's not going to happen, which is another reason why we're limiting the access that we spoke about, so that we can control who's coming in and who's leaving this building and always have eyes on them. Does that help? Yes. Anybody else? Any other questions?
Yes, sir. Going back to our kids' safety, is it best that all of our kids keep their name tags on at all times, number one, and number two, is there going to be any education given to our kids as well? Obviously, we don't want to panic them, but at the same time, our kids need to be kind of trained like some of the public school kids, where they kind of know what to do too.
You know, that's a really great question, and I do have some pretty frequent conversations with our children's ministry folks. We can absolutely put something together for training for the kids and for our adult volunteers that are back there and staff. I think that's a great idea. The best way to make sure your plan works is to exercise your plan. And we do have some things in place, but to your question, it's obvious to me that not everybody's aware of some of those things, and it would be good for us to do that. So I will make it a point to get with Becca and Amy and the folks that are over our children's ministry and work on making something like that happen. Thank you for that.
Okay, there's sometimes that I work the front desk at nights on Wednesdays, and when the kids are there, they're over there at that far end, and they open them doors for letting people in and out. Are they going to stop that? Because there can be some guy that's going to come trying in when they're there, letting kids in and out. You were saying about closing the doors where they can't get at the front desk, those doors.
That's a great question, and it's something that we're working on. What happens a lot of times is somebody's walking up to a door that shouldn't be a usual access at this point, but you know them, and so you let them in. That happens all the time. I watch it happen every Sunday. Over time, these things will become more commonplace, which is another reason for doing this. The best part of prevention is education, agreed? And so you can't do what you're not aware of. You can't fix what you don't know about. And so this is a part of that, to get folks up to speed and understanding why we're doing some of the things that we're doing. And you can help us out with that by saying, go to the front door. And it's not convenient. We get that. but our world's not convenient. And if we're going to maintain a safe environment for our folks here, some things are going to be a little bit inconvenient. But our safety is going to be that much higher. So that's a great question. I see it happen all the time. And I'm asking that if any of you see those things happen or you're standing there, point them in the direction to the front door. Help us out with that. That'd be a great help. Yes, you did. I remember.
Do you remember that?
You were a big topic of conversation.
I had no idea that I was a security risk, honestly. I was just having fun, you know? I was old and I was going to be fun.
Well, it was fun.
And then, but I know your security works because somebody came right up to me, some man, and said to me, "What are you doing?"
Your safety team in action, right? Because having a clown in service on a Sunday morning is, and you weren't even handing out animal balloons, you know, so but yes, we did notice. Thank you for that. That's funny. Anybody else? Dave?
I've been very privileged in my life to be able to teach self-defense for women with the police department. One of my areas of concern is the pastors are always the main target if anybody has a grudge or anybody wants to walk in here. I'm also concerned of being part of the choir and the band. Do we have security behind? I know we have a lot of people in the sanctuary at the front doors, and obviously you don't want us to know if you're behind us, but who's behind us looking this way?
That's a great question, and the way that works is we will make rounds through the back side here in the hallway during the service and just make sure that things are as we left them. The choir room door here, we staff in the morning until service starts, and then that is locked until service is over, so that access is at least controlled. We don't have anybody that is full-time in the back area here, but we do walk through there and check things during the service to see that everything is, again, like we left it. Does that answer your question? Okay. Anybody else?
First of all, thanks for everything you do. The second thing, is there a reunification place? A lot of times I see when there's an active shooter, people going all over the place. If you have kids leaving, different choir personnel leaving, is there a place so people aren't making a second reentry into finding out, where are these people located? Because you always see, on the news that, well, there's 17 people unaccounted for.
Right, right.
I know a lot of times in the schools, they'll sit back and have a unification where they're all going to meet.
Yeah, that's a great question. So at the moment, no. But that is something that we will work on, because especially for kids and parents, if our children's area staff exit the children out a certain direction, where can parents reconvene with their children? That goes to your question as well. We have not addressed that yet, but obviously we need to. It's a critical importance. And one of the big challenges in those large events is family reunification, bringing the families, the parents, to their kids and so forth. So we'll add that to our list and make that a priority to get that done, because that's really a great question.
The last thing I just want to mention, would it be easier for you all, you had mentioned, putting your hand up if you conceal carry, would it be easier for a lot of us who do and feel comfortable to go one-on-one with you and say, hey, I just want to let you know this is me, because a lot of times there's a lot of friendly fire, and just so that you know the personnel, not everybody's going to tell you, but it'll limit some stuff.
Right, which is why I don't ask people to raise their hands. That's none of my business. But yes, that's never going to hurt to, get together with us or you could also join the team. Then we'd really know who you are. I'm just saying. But yeah, that's never going to be a bad thing. Right here. Miss Patty.
What can our ushers and greeters do to help the safety team? I know Ron was working on getting us together to educate us. What can we do? Is there anything you can tell our team right today and schedule something later or whatever?
Okay, that is a great question, and yes, that has come up in the past. There's a lot, and is there a time when the ushers, greeters ever meet together at one time? Okay, we could put on some training on how to identify things that look out of the ordinary, or that may be a potential problem. But that would be very easy to do. I could come in and sit down and do a training with your folks, and we could do it on a recurring basis just to keep things fresh. Absolutely, because there's plenty of things you could do in that arena.
Just a real quick clarification. You mentioned several locks here are timed and so on. Does that mean that they cannot be used to leave at any time? Are any of them locked to the point where you could go that direction?
No, sir. That would be against the fire code, and being a former fire chief, I don't want to get in trouble for that. That'd be like me becoming an arsonist, which there's always a little bit of that in us. But anyways, no. Exit points are always going to be exit points. You just can't gain entry from the outside. Great question.
Anyone else?
Over here. Dave's getting his steps in this morning.
That's good. I don't mind. This is all good stuff.
So I might cry. My kid's dad was a shooter last year. He shot his wife, her dad, and her dad's girlfriend. It killed the girlfriend. Is there something that we could put in place if somebody's having problems outside of church with an ex or family member, that they could come to one of the safety team and say, hey, this is not, we're having problems in the house. We never would have expected anything like that to happen.
Absolutely. That actually occurs more often than you know. And absolutely, if anybody's having or is aware of situations like that could end up here, please let us know. Our sheriff's deputy often will let us know about those things, but absolutely, come and find one of us, let us know what's happening, and we will do what we can to make sure that we are mindful and aware of that individual or problem. Okay? And it does happen. I mean, that's part of what we do as a church is minister to people, but we also want to be aware of those things that could be a threat that we might not think about from people that we know. Anybody else? Well, I just want to thank you very much for taking the time, letting us interrupt your Sunday school to be here this morning and hear what we do as a safety team, why we do what we do as a safety team. And again, I encourage you, if you're interested, we'd love to have you. And we've got lots of places where you can serve. But understand that if your service with us involves a firearm, that is something that I take extremely serious. And it's something that we have made a commitment to, that if we're going to carry a firearm in our efforts to protect this church, we're going to be the very best we can. And if that's not something that you're willing to commit to with a firearm, then find another area of our safety team to be on. We just don't want to take that kind of a risk of people hurting somebody that we shouldn't. That's the worst thing that could ever happen. So, and for you personally, that holds true. Be as competent and careful and safe as you can with your firearm. Remember, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So thank you again. I appreciate you all being here. If you have questions, come and see us. Thanks again.